Hello, lovelies. God, what the fuck even is my life at this point? So, I was contacted privately by the creator of this work, wanting me to review their work. Doubtless, having heard that I am something of a free speech warrior, which has taken on a rather negative connotation of late, though perhaps not told that I am a very left-wing free speech warrior. A World War II furry game in which you play the Nazis. Actually post World War II, but it's set in 1955 in a world in which the Nazis at least fought people to a standstill and took over the entirety of Europe. Though I doubt we would ever have joined them, or that they could have made a serious go of Operation CeeLo, but there you go. Now, the Nazis won is like baby's first alter history. Can't really necessarily fault someone for this. And this game as a whole is very much baby's first thing. I can't, for the life of me, figure out why anyone would think that there would be a useful intersection between people who like the Year Zero engine, furries, and Nazis. And the author, in fact, claims to be Jewish. Whether that is genuine, and they're just completely tone deaf to their people's history, or whether it's some sort of shield against criticism, I don't know. That was interesting, to say the least. But I'm going to look through it, and you're going to suffer with me. Because you know I hate furries, and you know I hate Nazis. Alright, so what we have here is a very poorly laid out, with poor font choices, probably put together in, I don't know, Word or OpenOffice or something, rather than properly desktop published. It's something, alright. Now, quite apart from all the Nazism and everything. Oh, sorry, 14, 15 years after, not 10. Quite apart from anything else that it does horribly, look at the layout. That's a big font. It's a very blocky font. It's a dark font. Bold choice, you might even say. That's all bad in and of itself. The spacing is odd, spaced out a bit too much as well, perhaps. Could have done without that, especially since the whole thing runs to over 400 pages. And it's a large font. Maybe as a furry, his audience is mostly made up of mole furries with bad eyesight. I don't know. But look at the way the text is. It's centered. All of it is censored. Pretty much all of it throughout the entire book is centered. And it looks really amateurish and really bad. It should be to the left, at least, and justify it if you have to. But, I mean, Iron Sky was fun, right? The sources here are fun. Maybe they're trying to be comedic, but the comedy is pretty thin. I mean, part of that is the world in which we live, I suppose, makes lols at fascism fall a bit flat. I don't know, but I can't really fault the influences. I'm surprised Sven Hassel isn't in there. But yeah. I mean, they say it's meant to be military action and comedy. I am really having a hard time seeing the comedy, you know. And I found the furry death camps in Second Life funny, but this I'm finding difficult. Except the kind of sophomoric stuff. Like I appreciate a good pun, but calling the DM the Deutschemeister is a bit much, and it's also missing out a perfect opportunity to use one of those incredibly long German compound words like Übergruppenführer or something. Yeah, that would have been better. I mean, Gruppenführer or Gruppenmeister GM would have been better. I think Deutscher Meister is a bit of a slur on the whole German people, to my mind. Mechanics wise, it is the Year Zero engine, so you know how that works, which isn't very well. It's a pool of 6-sided dice. You roll them. 6s are successes. If you want to push what you're doing, you re-roll a bunch of the dice, see if you get any more 6s. But if you push and still fail, it's bad. Yeah, and that's basically it. Now, the Year Zero engine to me seems a particularly weird thing to base your game on here, because they're really into their military action. And one of the major setbacks for the new Twilight 2000 was that the Year Zero engine is just not crunchy enough to get into that whole tactical military fetishism, have your weapon choices and so on really make a difference. You know, it's just not really possible on such a compressed scale of success and failure and so on. So that doesn't work particularly well. Well, you know, that's this video banned in France and most of Europe. They also went apparently to the Venger Satanist School of Marketing because they've trumpeted the fact that it's banned off drive-through RPG, which I mean isn't surprising, right? I may not agree with most of their censorship choices, though they have resolutely failed to censor people who have stolen art and material and plagiarized from others, but still, it's not really that surprising, is it, that an openly Nazi game would get censored on drive-through and most other places as well. In fact, I was given a download link to itch.io, and someone's clearly been reporting the user because I got a warning that downloading this software, even though it's a PDF, this person had been reported as, I don't know, sending malware, shit like that. Anyway, yeah, it's the Year Zero engine, which doesn't work for this kind of thing at all, so I don't know why they did it. But they've added a whole bunch of crunch, so if you want to play a bit more of a crunchy, military-focused game using the Zero engine, I mean, that is the useful part of this book. And if they broke that out of this book and published it without all the Nazism, then maybe they would have a product that people would actually buy and be interested in. But probably not now, because, you know, you've kind of outed yourself as being, at the very least, fash adjacent, unfortunately. So we have all the furry races. Again, that's a bit of a weird thing, but I do remember the furry death camps and so on, so I can kind of see the joke there. Nazi furs is a bit of a thing, I think. Yeah, several far-right people have been outed in the cosplay community, and hey, Richard Spencer likes femboys, so I mean, yeah, what are you going to do? Of course the chicken is French. Little jokes like that might get a slight wry smile, I suppose, but that's about it. Mostly the comedy doesn't really land. Oh, did I forget? Alright, so natalism, often associated with fascism. I think we're seeing that come to the fore once again. So here we see our bunny girl, appropriately enough. Yeah, we have weaponry, we have machinery, we need soldiers, so get busy. Yeah. Okay, so then we get in the birds and the bees, which is always complicated when it comes to furries. Will they be able to shag each other? Will they not be able to shag each other? Will young come out? Will it be a hybrid or a mule? Or will it take after one parent or the other? And we have the... I like this euphemism, right? The struggle cuddle, the struggle snuggle. Censorship always results in interesting euphemisms. Obscenity, taboo, and euphemism all go together. But here, I mean, you're selling a Nazi book. Did you really need to soften the blow or anything? Yes, there is rape, which is basically an extension of the grappling rules. I'm not averse, as you're probably well aware, to games including dark elements. And I think some sort of furry anime has included these kind of elements in it more recently. I'm not averse, but this seems like a rather cheap, exploitative, not particularly well-grounded effort to include it. Probably to appeal to fetishists, but if you're going to do that, why aren't all your stormtroopers diaper furs? You know, cubs. God, I hate this so much. Alright, so yeah, then we get all the species. Blah, blah, blah. Yes, different furries have slightly different abilities. Might this not have been better to do in Iron Claw or Jade Claw, or a clone of their system or something? Or something more open where you could carve out your own species by mixing various abilities? Would that not be a good idea? I don't know. But yeah, they include scalies and insectoids, and that, as well as all your usual stuff. There's a bit of weeaboo fetishism in here as well, but given the Empire of Japan, I guess you can kind of go along with that. Humans are present, though this seems a little bit weird, but rare. So I don't, and they're weaker than everybody else. So I don't quite know what they're going for here. Maybe like the humans in zoos in some vague furry stuff. I don't know. Some of the art isn't bad. That's quite striking for all the fascist symbology and so on. The pose is actually quite good. Looks quite natural. That's an actually effective piece of art, but a lot of the art is overly cartoonish. You know, if Art Spiegelman saw this, I think he'd kill himself on principle just so that he could spin in his grave. You get special abilities that go along with a whole bunch of stuff, backgrounds as well. Character classes go along with your species choice. So you're just a pleb soldier. Are you a monk? Are you a member of the Gestapo? Are you a member of the mechanized infantry, cavalry, which, I mean, after the first skirmishes of the war seems pretty out of place. Logistics manager, specialists, decorated soldiers. There are wonder weapons and things like power armor and so on. You can have a retinue, you can be a samurai, you can have retainers with various options. There's magic, because why wouldn't there be with everything else? Vril makes itself available. Demonology and angel summoning. Aryan magic. I mean, I have The Occult Reich by J.H. Brennan to hand usually, because when I'm doing something historical, so I can't really fault it on that. Yeah, equipment, weapons, vehicles, expanded weapon rules, battle rules, rules for ships and planes and stuff like that. This is where the game is actually somewhat worthwhile. And you could take some of these rules and apply them in Twilight 2000 and so on if you wanted to make a game with a bit more crunch. Some of it's a little bit absurd, but that's fine. Wonder weapons, nonsense, and yeah, it is a furry game. But yeah, as you can see, there's a bit of tech fetishism, mecha love going on here. They do address what do you do in this game, and And either it's a military mission-based game, or you could play a smaller scale mercenary company, just trying to get by, taking missions from whoever. That's more like a traditional tabletop game. You have a bit more autonomy there. I think there are more ways that you could play, and I think it'd be much more appealing to most people to play the enemies of the Reich. And if I were to be dumb enough to do something like this, I would probably start with the America book, and then maybe the Russian book, and then maybe the Nazi book, so that you have, the full panoply, and you ease people into it. But no. Experience rules, base building. Yeah, it's got a hell of a lot of crunch and background, which stretches credulity. For me, as a historian, it's got to be said. What more is there to say, really? How many more pages? About another 100 pages. NPC sheets for squads and individual soldiers, amongst the enemies, Soviets, Americans, who appear to be Confederates in this, so quite why they're fighting the Nazis, I don't know. Other European troops who've joined the Nazis, which is awful. Japanese soldiers. Australia, interestingly enough, is kind of left alone for the most part in this, but they have joined with other smaller nations to defend themselves and have become quite... Reminds me of South Africa in the real world. South Africa was forced to go kind of entirely independent during apartheid because no one wanted anything to do with them, and they ended up coming up with some very interesting weapons and armoured vehicles and so on as a result of their isolation. And as a little piece of world building, the way Australia is treated in this is quite interesting and along those sorts of lines. Maybe I'm giving them more credit than it's worth, I don't know. Then you got your Deutsche Meister device. Mine would be, don't play this. So, okay. Actual review, and then I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit for a while. Okay? Okay. Style-wise, 2. Alright? Some of the art is actually good. Whatever the subject matter might be, some of it is worthwhile. I'm not averse entirely to anthropomorphic stuff, despite my great disdain for furries. And if furry stuff is what turns your crank, let your freak flag fly. Have fun with that. Just do it without me. But I like things like Gronville by Brian Talbot. I like Omar the Cat Dancer. I like the older anthro stuff. I would make a distinction between anthro and furry. Right? Fritz the Cat, anthro. Doug Winger, furry. Right? Maybe to most people it's a distinction without a difference, but to me it means a lot. Anyway, some of the art is actually quite good. Most of it is just kind of meh, which seems weird because there are so many furry artists out there. Maybe they just cost too much. Maybe that's what the problem is here. But I would rather have seen the artist who did those larger splash pieces do more, because they're better. I mean, just anatomy, sense of motion, successfully turning animals into more humanoid figures. They're just better at it. Flat. Done. But too much of this is awfully laid out. Too much of the art is substandard. Using bold pretty much throughout is a bold choice, but no. So and the writing, the humour fails to come through for the most part, except when it's at its most crude and simplistic. Alright. So 2, because of a couple of standout pieces of art, mostly. Substance-wise, it's a playable game. It has a lot of stuff in it, and a lot of stuff that would be perhaps useful to Year Zero engine players, provided they can stomach the Nazi shit, which most people are not going to be able to do. But still, it is a complete game. It's not missing anything. The way the data is presented and so on makes it less useful, and it does not need to be 430 pages of book. So, a low 3. So that's Style 2, Substance 3. That is 5 out of 10, or 2.5 out of 5. Remember, 3 is the average, so this is substandard. Now, that is me trying to be as objective as possible, but I cannot recommend that you purchase or play this game because it is pretty despicable, and or the humour doesn't really come through. Right. Soapbox time. Iron Eagle, 2nd edition. Yes, a sequel to a thing you've never heard of. It exists as a sort of aesthetic war crime, an act of cultural vandalism that would almost be impressive if it weren't so utterly witless and charmless. Now, let's be clear. Games and other media about Nazis, even from the Nazi point of view, can and should exist. Reichstar was an intriguing alternate history. Dust span pulp into something almost poetic. Gearkrieg had its own diesel punk allure. Even the incongruously charming Barbarossa card game, with its embrace of cutesy anime girls and panzer divisions, preceding Girls und Panzer by quite some time, had the good grace to be self-aware of what it was. Cinema 2 has offered ample precedent. Cross of Iron, for example, The Eagle Has Landed, the cold claustrophobia of Das Boot, the dreadful inevitability of Downfall, even the gleeful burlesque of nonsense that was Iron Sky, or most of Iron Sky, or the low farce of TV's Allo Allo. Yeah, these all demonstrate that even fascism can be a playground for art as well as a cautionary tale. I appreciate I'm giving more Leather Daddy at the moment than Commissar, but The Man in the High Castle, Fatherland, Look Who's Back, SSGB. There's a lot of examples where this sort of thing is done well, artfully, in a manner that is both thought-provoking and artistic. But this is Drek. Not quite the sulphurous, satanic stench of Rahowa, for example, but close enough that one hesitates to inhale. From time to time, you encounter a game that is someone's private political thesis, their manifesto, and that has been a plague on role-playing games for about a decade, albeit mostly coming from one side of the aisle. It is almost always ghastly, inelegant, blunt, artless. Or sometimes you run into a designer's singular obsession run amok. I remember a very earnest fellow who produced a whole role-playing game epic about bats, a sort of Watership Down for chiropterologists, and couldn't find a single willing player to give it a go. I felt bad for the guy, but I also didn't want to play it. Once in a generation, the Venn diagrams all overlap, right? You get those two things, and you get perhaps the worst one of all, which is when you get someone's weaponized monomania, an ASD, the hero system, the endless spreadsheet of a rulebook is perhaps the best known example, but there are others. And when those three overlap, you get things like Fatal, being the infamous case study yielding something that may be close to Iron Eagle, a monument to bad taste, erected on a quicksand of bad timing. I think Iron Eagle aspires to the notoriety and infamy of Fatal, hence loudly crowing about being banned off drive-thru. but it never quite wholly commits to the bit in a way that would provide that kind of infamy, if not riches. Nor does it ever achieve the kind of deft competence that would make it a good game. To release this today, of all days, a game in which one plays as a fascist hero, is to demonstrate, I think, a tin ear. With authoritarianism swaggering back onto the world stage and the United States rapidly descending even further into brown-shirted thuggery and open aspirations to fascist imperialism, this project feels at best tone-deaf, at worst a dog whistle. Probably, maybe, possibly just a troll, like that fatal second edition was. But here's the uncomfortable hinge of the argument here. Here's where we go in a slightly different direction. This isn't a reason to ban it, any more than a joke tangentially about our patron saint of amateur tracheotomies is a reason to wield state power to ban a comedian from the television. You may desire free speech so that you can scream nigger in someone's face without repercussions. I require free speech so that art, real art, the art that I aspire to make, may roam untrammeled across all of human experience, good and bad, right and wrong, so that satire can sting, experiments can misfire, jokes can fall flat, and even the outrageous has room to breathe. So no, we are not the same. For me to have what I need, what I want, I must defend your right to be a throbbing, prolapsed arsehole of a human being, in public. You, meanwhile, would never return the favour. You don't return the favour. You're drunk on hypocrisy and righteous fury, and a chance to do what you have decried as bad for a very long time. For every cross of iron, there must also be an Ilsa she-wolf of the SS, that glorious exploitation relic, whose shameless sleaze became perversely part of cinema history. The duds and failures, the outsider provocations, the hate speech, the trollish hoaxes, they form the mulch from which the stronger vines of creativity might grow. Free expression means little or nothing when it's just a laurel for what you already approve of. It matters most, I would say it only matters, when it protects things that we might revile. And I revile this. So, I would say let Iron Eagle's second edition sell through drive-thru, or whatever digital back alley will have it in this world. I loathe it, its politics, its plurality, its absence of wit, its artlessness. But its right to exist is the same right that shelters the next great, difficult, dangerous idea or breathtaking piece of art, or the dreck that I put out. Zang.
Colony Moon is a cooperative or competitive story game about founding a moon colony, making it succeed and opening up the rest of the solar system for exploration. Players take on the parts of the board and make decisions about the future of the colony, expending political capital and gaining prestige when their plans work. Available at post-mort.com, lulu.com for print, and drive-thru RPG.
Today, see, I don't like the, I have, okay, like a lot of you, I hate a lot, you know? But I hate with style and creativity. Yeah!